Hello, I'm Natalie Becker and welcome back to It's Africa's Time. As you can see, our show has a new look, a new feel, and in upcoming episodes we aim to bring you more diverse and interesting stories about inclusive business engagements across the continent. Today we focus on South Africa and feature 3 multinational corporations and their commitment to the country's socio-economic and environmental sustainability. We start our journey in Pretoria at BMW's Roslyn plant, where South Africa's leading premium car producer is celebrating its 40th anniversary.
We are this year 40 years in the country, and in 1973 this plant here was the first overseas plant of the whole BMW group. And we have developed over time, step by step, in a very sustainable manner. First of all, we started a small export program in 1994, and then we introduced a second shift in the plant in 1999, which was a major step, an increase of more than 200% in total production and an increase of 400% in export. And we are now responsible for nearly 25% of the BMW 3 Series sedan demand worldwide. We are producing cars for the local market. We are producing cars for the United States, for Canada, for Taiwan, Singapore, and for Sub-Saharan Africa. Roughly 6 years ago, BMW South Africa already started on energy efficiency programs. And what we have achieved is quite remarkable. We have reduced the energy for production by 25%. We have reduced the water which we use by 50%. We have reduced the waste which comes out of production by 50%, and the carbon emissions by 25%.
BMW South Africa, together with other corporates, we understand that for us to continue to be sustainable and to do well, we need to have a population that is educated, that is learned, that is able to generate wealth.
First of all, we need a stable political environment, and we need to have all the systems available like education, the right skills to continue business.
In order for us to try to bring people to an equitable level, funds are going to be needed. Interested people are going to be needed to make that happen.
Corporate social responsibility at BMW takes on many facets. We really concentrate in 3 key areas: education, local community upliftment, and then HIV and AIDS. All 3 of these are major factors on our business. We now have more than 100 projects running, and most of our projects running in the area of education. Their fundamental understanding of maths and science is really vitally important for numeracy and numerical literacy. And certainly if you want to be an engineer and you want to be able to produce the cars that we produce here, maths and science is the foundation of that.
Maths and science is important because it teaches us creative thinking. It allows us to express our viewpoints on our scientific experiments, and it allows for teacher and learner interactions. Maths teaches us to be hard workers, to be determined and to persevere in each and everything that we do, to be much greater leaders in the near future.
It makes things which many people can view as boring very interesting to me. Maths and science is a very important subject, and because everything around us is inspired by science. Science is the root of all things, from the human use, from the buildings that we stay in, to even the textbooks that we read.
For most of these kids, they normally have to learn about electrical circuits or lenses out of a textbook. However, if you give a child an electrical circuit or a lens to play with, it's very easy through experimentation to see how these things work. So the Science and Excellence project really equips these schools with maths and science laboratories, and then through a university program we teach the teachers how to use the more practical elements of the maths and sciences to teach their kids. And we really have excellent results. On the whole, our schools, and we have more than 60 schools in this maths and science program, deliver results about 20 to 25% better than the national average in maths and science.
We bring the equipment to the school, we bring the mobile units to the schools, we work together with the curriculum of the schools. We thought that it would be a good thing to have 2 primary schools and 1 high school as a starting point in any area to help the kids to maintain the culture of learning.
For me personally, because I want to become a chemical engineer, it helps me with the basic foundations of learning.
The people who will build tomorrow's South Africa are in colleges and schools today. So those people are few at the moment. So we need those people to complete their studies so that they can help in the future innovation.
It's probably quite difficult to see how us helping a child in a rural school helps our business, but ultimately we're creating a new breed of mathematicians, people that are having the ability to go to university to get a degree in the maths and sciences. With that comes an opportunity for them to become a part of our economy. The more successful they are, the bigger our market for cars is. On the other hand, we have a huge demand for engineers in our plant. Out of our maths and science program, we offer 10 to 15 bursaries a year for students specifically from our maths and science schools. And once they've completed their degree, they're then automatically put into our BMW graduate trainee program. They come and they spend about 2 to 3 years with us, rotating through various departments. And obviously the option for them is full-term employment after that.
All overall, I would say more than 40,000 people in the whole network get their income out of activities which are done with BMW South Africa. Over the years, we have employed whole families, grandfathers, fathers and the sons here, and they have made their living out of this. And over the years, if this is a permanent income flow, it raises up all the communities. And as longer we invest here, as better it will get.
The automotive crisis started in 2007 and impacted significantly on the Rosslyn plant. But as safeguarding skills plays a large part in sustainability, even during the worst part of the financial crisis, BMW did not lay off any staff.
People are our capital. It's easy to say our people are our backbone, but it's more difficult to prove it in a crisis. First of all, we captured new export markets. In a second step, when it got worse, we were the only one who took part in the government's training and layoff scheme in order to maintain our people, to maintain the skills which we have built up over the years.
I think all companies have an integral part to play in society. Being part of this environment for a long time, we've been here for 40 years now, it's absolutely vital that the profits we generate from our business, we deliver back to society in some way. Ultimately, we need to develop society in order to have a future market.
Business is about success, or it's about profit. And profit is made by people, for people. We take our social responsibility very serious because we believe that this is absolute necessary, and that is a way of doing sustainable business all over the world.
The succulent Karoo boasts a very rich flora, with 69% of its plants found nowhere else. For 3 months of the year, tourists come from all around the world to witness the spectacular flower show in Namaqualand. However, for the rest of the year, the region goes from this to this. The Global Bank City provides funding to Conservation South Africa's Skeppies program, which encourages alternative business initiatives that create employment and at the same time increase the local community's resilience to climate change.
In Namaqualand, the core economic activities are really focused around agriculture and around tourism. So without a healthy environment here, our local economies cannot be sustained.
We have a lot of social issues due to the downscaling of mining companies. And what people normally do is they go back to the old traditional way of farming on an already overgrazed area. So by providing alternatives to retrenched employees, our message out there is that people need nature to thrive and that everybody can actually develop through nature conservation.
Vera's Guest House is an eco-friendly tourist destination which employs local plants in its main facilities. During the high season, guests can choose to sleep in traditional grass huts that are built every year, reproducing those that the local Nama people used to live in.
The kookskerm is an open place like a boma which is built from bushes, and we prepare our food inside that kookskerm on the fire. So we make traditional food in our kookskerm.
We constantly monitor and evaluate the projects that is with Skeppies, and through this we are able to identify problems or difficulties that the projects might be facing, and together we can tackle those difficulties and solve it so that they can become more sustainable.
The Skeppies program is helping a lot because they give us some training about the climate change, and they do mentoring on the project, and they also help with funding.
Great Vera's business growing from strength to strength. In this area, her success has really inspired people, and she's actually grown her own competition as another guest house, and several small catering companies have emerged to compete with her, but also to take advantage of her increased traffic through town.
Once a month, Earl Muller collects used cooking oil from the hospitality industry, turning it into cheaper and greener biodiesel at his biofuel plant in Concordia.
We recycle used cooking oils from all over the region, restaurants, takeaway shops. Previously, the used cooking oils landed on wasteful sites where they contaminated the environment. Biodiesel is the only alternative fuel that's good for the environment and for humans.
Biodiesel increases the fuel economy and power of diesel engines and lubricates better than regular diesel. Additionally, the blend of 50% biodiesel and 50% petroleum diesel that Earl Muller uses emits 40% less carbon dioxide than regular diesel. It also reduces sulfur oxide emissions. It is non-flammable, non-toxic, and biodegradable.
As a member of a previously disadvantaged community, we find it very difficult to get enough money to expand the business. I approached Skeppies to help me to get the business up and running with a small grant fund.
With the assistance of city's funding, his production has increased from 10,000 to 35,000 litres per month.
Our business is providing a product that is in great demand in the community of Concordia as well as the surrounding communities. Diesel is being used by farmers as well as businesses for their everyday use.
Earl's project is a very good example of a project that has a really good conservation outcome. He is able to take a whole lot of waste cooking oil that would have been dumped into the natural environment and make a really good use of that, turning it into a marketable product, also producing a byproduct glycerine which can also be used for something productive. So he's got a really nice closed cycle in his production, but he's also using his product then to reduce emissions, which is reducing greenhouse gases in his own small way.
The main aim is basically to demonstrate that small things can work. And once we see that government is buying it, that big businesses is buying it, and they amplify it, then we will have a bigger impact.
City's commitment to the Skeppies program is absolutely crucial. So they really took a risk on the program, and we really appreciate that because as we've learned together, I think we've built a very strong network of small businesses that are really aware and of what the climate impacts and risks to those businesses are going to be.
The work of Conservation South Africa in Namaqualand provides people with access to training and empower them to become more adapt to the effects of climate change. And we also provide them with alternatives to the traditional ways of earning a livelihood, for example, mining and farming. And by supporting eco-friendly businesses, we also ensure that people become more sensitive to biodiversity issues and nature conservation, and therefore that will lead to a better future for all of us.
We now chat to Caroline Kendi-Robb, Executive Director of the Africa Progress Panel, an international advocate for equitable and sustainable development in Africa.
Climate change is still a very grave concern for Africa, and you know, many people have defined climate change as the greatest social justice challenge of our time. And if you think about it, Africa has had the least to do with creating the effects of climate change, but is a continent that will suffer the most. Farmers themselves are ready to adapt, but it needs investment. And I think this is the critical issue at the moment. It's investment, and there needs to be clear policies that are focusing on the African farmer. And those policies need to focus on the 70% of people across Africa whose livelihoods are dependent on farming. The other side, though, is the urban areas, and I think we'll see increasing effects of climate change in urban areas. And by 2050, 45% of the African population will be living in urban areas. Many people rightly are calling for some kind of multilateral solution to climate change, although it is proving much more difficult in the times of economic crisis across the globe. But without a doubt, we need some kind of global solution to climate change.
In today's last feature, It's Africa's Time, we'll look at South Africa's strategic requirement for increased renewable energy production. We talk with government representatives and the Old Mutual Investment Group South Africa, whose portfolio has already taken big steps into the green energy space. Across the continent, wind and solar resources are plentiful, making them the key focus of renewable energy solutions. In South Africa, government's realistic target for 2014 is that 14% of the national power be produced from renewable sources.
There are a number of issues that have become very clear over the years. First of all is that we are not in a position to continue building more and more fossil-fired power stations without regard to the environmental impacts due to the greenhouse gas emissions from these mainly coal-based power stations.
To the community at large, fossil fuel could result into respiratory diseases which cost the country a lot of money from a medical perspective.
Secondly, what we're beginning to also find is that more and more it does not make technical sense for South Africa to build big, lumpy coal-fired power stations in one corner of the country and then transport the power, down long transmission lines.
The coal power stations are predominantly located in the east of the country, and power is then exported to the west, resulting in transmission losses as well as high costs. Renewable energy installations, however, facilitate small pockets of production between these main transition lines, supporting the national grid with local, cost-effective power.
But if you wanted to invest in renewable energy, it has been quite difficult up until this point. Now suddenly investors have an opportunity to participate either by way of debt or equity in renewable energy, which is arguably a pretty important theme if you look at the government's integrated resource plan, in line with sort of international norms and standards to try and address this much broader societal issue called climate change.
We believe that we are one of the first movers in that segment as a country, and accordingly we would like to be able to take full advantage. There is also an element that relates to creating local jobs out of this industrialization. We believe that through bringing most of the value chain into the country, we might be able to stimulate our economic growth in an area that is huge in terms of its potential.
purpose of the Ideas Fund is to invest in infrastructure assets, and what we're seeking to do is leverage the 2 trillion rand in retirement fund capital in South Africa into investments that are the direct economic drivers of our economy.
I mean, if you're a pension fund, you have liabilities that sit well out into the future. Somebody with a pension fund should be asking themselves, will the world be a better governed, more environmentally sound, more socially equitable place when it comes time for me to retire as a result of the investments that are being made now on my behalf?
So what a mix is doing is leveraging institutional capital. So again, that retirement fund capital, and through funds such as the Ideas Fund, we're investing in projects to create independent power producers. Then the independent power producers will produce what's planned to be 20 to 30% of the overall production of electricity in South Africa.
At the moment, we've got one dominant player, which is the national utility, Eskom. Therefore, it is imperative for the country to have other players into the generation mix. But more importantly is that independent power producers would come in with smaller generators, which could be located in different areas of the country, especially in rural areas, and it could even stimulate the economies there. That's key because it tries to assist with some of the social developmental goals.
I mean, our argument is that by picking up a sustainability lens and looking at the world, we get deeper insight into risk and opportunity. Certainly when you look at a company and you ask yourself, well, is this company providing a good or a service that is going to be around for the next 10 or 15 years? Are they being mindful of the unpriced externalities, be they social or environmental, in their business model? Will they be able to continue to survive as the world starts to evolve and starts rewarding or penalizing companies that aren't taking some of these risks into consideration?
But we also pursue policies that would incentivize the development of renewable energy options on the supply side and on the demand side. The policy is that we would buy a certain amount of renewable energy into the generation mix, notwithstanding the fact that it might not be the cheapest option available for us. But in macroeconomic terms, we also recognize the positive impact that this makes.
Renewable energy is already financially viable. So our program of investment in renewable energy is not part of any charitable work. We're investing because it makes sound financial sense.
The renewable energy investment story in South Africa is a positive one. It's a great example of private sector and government coming together to direct capital towards addressing a long-term sustainability issue.
We certainly have a good starting point, and our starting point is that we have a resource that most parts of the world would envy. That, coupled with the program that we have designed around renewable energy, puts us in a strategically better position through technology development, through local manufacturing, through creating a market for those products that would hopefully, start permeating not only the South African development community, but also Africa and, ultimately the world.
Africa growth rates have been incredible over the last few years, and the economies of Africa have been far more resilient than many people have predicted or expected. And the IMF in 2013 predicts that Africa will grow at 5.7%. And this is incredible considering that the globe is predicted to grow at 3.5%. So we still have this resilience across many countries in Africa. So one of the greatest challenges is inequality. Inequality is a drag on growth. There are still over 380 million people in Africa who survive on $1.25 a day. So in the past, businesses were seen as separate from government and civil society. But many of the small businesses and big businesses across Africa are saying, as a business, we want to be involved in ensuring there's a shared value in society. A stable society with better health and better education outcomes is also a better society for us to invest in. So I think it's about throwing away these traditional roles of these different stakeholders and saying, actually, we all have a role to play But the other way that businesses can play a role in social change in Africa is through simply paying taxes. So this is about domestic resource mobilisation, which is critical for the government to be able to therefore invest in issues of education and health.
Thank you to all our contributors for their insights on today's show. Please join us next month on Tuesday, the 9th of July, where we feature the socio-economic impacts of infrastructural investment by companies operating in Liberia, Malawi and Mozambique. But for now, thanks for watching.